Well, good to be home. Never thought it was going to be 53 days, 1,500 kilometers. 500 kilometers more than I thought it was going to be. But I must say, you can really get into this gypsy lifestyle and definitely missing it, the simplicity of life on the road, just getting up early, 4:30 in the morning, grooming, feeding horses, having a cup of coffee, and getting on the road, and every day seeing another 35, 40 kilometers of different Botswana bush. So every day exciting, not knowing what's ahead. A lot of people wanted to see a map of the full route, and other people were asking about the birds we'd seen, and somebody even asked, why did you choose that particular route? Well, that's because of this book, Mike Main's Guidebook to Botswana, which is not your normal guidebook. This book tells you all the wildest, off the beaten track places to go, and really is what reading this has inspired me to go to the places we did, particularly the Hunters Road on the Zimbabwe border, and the southeast side of the Makadikadi. That's a wild place. The whole planning of the trip came together very quickly. It was all rather last minute. We just had a few notes here that we scribbled down of what we might need and what we took. But of course, with just such little planning, you need to have a fantastic backup team to really make it work. And without the support of that backup team, initially John O. James, John, and Kyle, and then for the latter half of the trip, Carl, who special mention, who did the whole 53 days with me, and Hadassah and Darren and Dwayne. It really wouldn't have been possible. So a big thanks to all of them. A real highlight, of course, was seeing some of these really remote and wild places of Botswana. And the second half of the trip, when we were passing through villages and camping alongside roads occasionally, was a true reflection on how wonderful the people of Botswana are, that we were left totally undisturbed. I guess there's probably not many countries in the world that's possible. So we put this map together of our route. You can see the whole country of Botswana. We thought we travelled a long way, but I can see there's still a lot of the country that still needs to be explored. But here's where we started, our home on the Tamalakani River, and obviously we went northwards first. This was the first leg up to the Zambezi River, the Chobe River. Second leg down to Nata. Third leg round to Moella, and then Moella to home. And the numbers designate the nights of the trip where we were. Because the first two legs, as I mentioned, were the real wildlife areas, and we saw all the iconic species that Botswana is famous for, that people come on safari to see. And we had really to spend every night on night watch duty. We had to chase a lot of spotted hyenas away. But for me, the highlights of the wildlife sightings would have been the more unusual species, and that would have been the herd of 30 eland, Africa's largest antelope. Brings back memories of the old days in Nika, where we used to get herds of 300. And then probably the top moment was when we came across a herd of 50 sable, the most majestic of all the antelope in Africa, in my view. And it was at the end of a very tough day when I think we'd had to lead the horses about 15 to 18 kilometers over some terrible basalt rock. And so that sighting really cheered us up at the end of that hard day. On those two sections, we also had probably our top birding sightings. We had most of our birding sightings because we had 4 professional guides as a support team. And I think in total in the trip we saw 250 plus species of birds. Second half we didn't see so many because once you get in the Kalahari, the birds are more sparsely distributed, and a lot of them are LBJs, little brown jobs, so not easy to identify from a horse. But the real top highlights for those of you who are interested in the birds would have been the not 1 but 6 racket-tailed rollers we came across in the Kasane Forest Reserve, and they were all doing their rolling display and calling and getting upset with each other. It was really spectacular, the bright colours and the rolling display. And then on the Chobe River, of course, incredible bird life, and we went for one last boat ride thanks to the kindness and hospitality and generosity of Adam and Jenny Young of Bequena Lodge, and in a 20-minute period we spotted African finfoot, half-collared kingfisher, and an incredible view out in the open of a whiteback night heron. Those are all 3 birds that are quite tricky to find. So that was definitely the top birding moment. And talking of birds, you might be able to pick up in the background the woodland kingfisher that arrived from West Africa a couple of weeks ago. That trilling sound, wonderful. Of course, with the whole 53 days, we passed through an incredible variety of habitats. The teak woodlands coming up as we approached Kasane, and coming back down along the Hunters Road were absolutely spectacular. The Zambezi teak, very hard wood that was used particularly famous for use for railway sleepers in the old days, and when those were replaced with metal sleepers, furniture, lovely wooden furniture made out of those old railway sleepers became the in thing in Zimbabwe. But one of the real floral highlights would have been just in this area, finding right on the border there, finding some protea plants of the only species of protea that occurs in Botswana. Of course, most proteas down in the Cape Floral Kingdom around Cape Town, but we also had 4 species up on the Nika in Malawi, and so it was really nice to see that, sadly not in flower. And then down in the southeast of the Makadikadi, when we came across these extraordinary forests of what like mini baobabs. I had no idea what they were, but I'm now just being told that they're sesame trees, and they were otherworldly. So the challenges on the trip changed as we moved into different areas. Of course, the first 2 legs, when we were in the big game country, we had to keep ourselves safe. Water, I think we went for about 9 days without seeing any standing water, so water for the horses was a huge challenge. But there was a lot of grazing, in these wildlife areas, and so I made it quite tough for the backup team by asking them to cut and rake grass every day. Once we reached Nata and moved into cattle country, challenges changed. There was no grass because it had been grazed by the cattle, so we had to carry grass. We had our truck with us, so we had a lot more water. It was a lot easier. But from then on, we were very much more off-road and having to work our way along the edge of the pans. And so there were different challenges there, particularly with a truck that, when loaded, was weighing up to 5 tons, and we were traveling on the salt pan surface that really shouldn't have had anything except a light vehicle. We planned the trip to end on the Beteti, so we at the last 2 weeks with water, endless quantities of water, which of course amazingly we were there first 2-3 weeks of September on the Beteti, and you think 2 months earlier, back in July, the Beteti had been completely dry. So that worked really, really well, and made the last leg home a lot easier. So yeah, in summary, the route was, we started off going along the southern edge of the Okavango, crossed the Mababi Depression, not allowed to enter the Chobe National Park, so we then just followed the boundary of the park along the 19th parallel, turned north. We had a couple of rest days at Poa, and then carried on up to Kazungula, the Chobe and Zambezi River, where we were kindly hosted at Bekwena, and then on down the Hunters Road, the Zimbabwe border, and again incredible hospitality from the Mulder family at Wild Tracks Eco Lodge and from the other Panda Matenga farmers, so a big thank you to them. And then on down, we left the Hunters Road in Gweshlepan and stopped off at Elephant Sands with Mike and Saskia Toth, again giving us an amazing stay, so a big thank you to them. And then on down to Nata Lodge, where I camped for 5 days when we rebuilt the team, as sadly 3 people had to go home and get on with the rest of their life. And then down the Sewer Pan, and despite the challenges, horses running away, truck getting stuck, it's always been, Robin is my favourite place in Africa to ride. Just a spectacular area to be on a horse, such really, beautiful open wilderness. When you feel in the morning and evening in the gentle light, you feel as though the pan's an incredible friend of yours, but as it gets hotter and hotter, you become more and more nervous of the pans. And then along the bottom edge of the pans, we were jumping from one small pan to another. Probably one of the only regrets I've got of the trip is that we decided not to divert to the Tsokotsa Pan. We were just, I guess, too tired, but we would love to have visited that, as that's where David Livingstone came through there, and he writes about stopping at Tsokotsa Pan. But you've got to leave something to come back for, so we'll definitely do a trip there by vehicle one day. And then joining the Beteti River and following it all the way home, stopping at Moella, where again we were kindly hosted by Mr. Moella himself. We were helped by so many people along the way, and met amazing people along the way as well. Loved meeting some of the local Botswana, the southern end of the Pans, who had wonderful stories for us of the old days. But none of this would have been possible, of course, without the horses and the wonderful 8 horses that were involved with the trip. Originally the 4 mares and then the 4 geldings. I hope those of you who've been on safari with us recognised them, enjoyed seeing them. Whilst I was away, I also have to thank our wonderful team of staff who looked after the horses and kept things going at home. We had 4 horses out on the trip, but there was another 36 back at home who needed looking after. Well, this strange and challenging year is almost over. But like in all challenging times, there have been some extraordinary positive moments. I mean, who would have thought that back in May we would have watched the river in front of our house fill up overnight after these extraordinary floods that filled the Okavango Delta this year. Such a contrast to the drought of last year. And over the last month, we've had the most incredible early rains. We've had almost half our annual rainfall already, when in November we normally get nothing. So that's provided wonderful grazing for our horses. And of course, we wouldn't have been able to spend 2 months on the road, exploring some of Botswana's very wild places if we would never have had this opportunity in normal times. But of course, the silver lining to our year was the birth of our first grandchild, dear little Isla. Botswana has recently reopened its borders, so we're very excited to be looking forward to welcoming the return of old friends and guests. Botswana with its wide open spaces, small population, fabulous wildlife, and never-ending sunny days, must be the perfect place to come on safari at this time. We feel there's a real yearning out there for people to escape the restrictions of the past year, and our safaris on horseback and on foot will provide that release and that freedom. We're going to continue to focus on the simplicity of the safari and the sensitivity towards the environment and to the local communities we work with. Despite the challenges of this past year, we are very pleased, thanks to the tireless efforts of the South African College of Tourism and the South African Trackers Academy, to see 6 of our sponsored students graduate successfully this year and to return home safely to Botswana. I think since the inception of this project, that brings it to a total of 15 students now, and we're incredibly excited to have been offered further places going forward in 2021. As ever, we have to have 1 or 2 unusual and new adventures during the year. So in 2021, we hope to do our first ride on horseback due south across the Makgadikgadi salt pans to the legendary Kubu Island, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a first. And I'm very excited to be returning to Malawi on a privately guided safari for the first time since we left 12 years ago. Of course, these future ideas are only possible because we managed to get through this year, and we only managed it thanks to the incredibly generous contributions so many people made towards our big ride. And for that, Robin and myself are eternally grateful. Thank you. All of us at Ride Botswana wish you a peaceful, festive season and a happy new year ahead. We here received an early Christmas present, and what a wonderful omen for the future.